and see how that works. Okay. So I'm just really excited about today's training. This is the first training of the year. Let's see how that works. Okay. Yeah. Let me do this real quick. So I'm just really excited about today's training. Okay. It is casting to live stream, but it was echoing, so I needed to change that. Okay. Um, this training is the first training of the year, and I'm going to introduce Dr. Kelly Little in just one moment, but it's the first training of the year. I could really think of no greater individual to kick off the year than Kelly Little. Um, just a really dope guy. So he is an absolute phenomenon in his own right, dealing with fatherhood and men, but also around emotional intelligence. My first work with him was around meditation and mindfulness, really. He is the first person that taught me, LJ, the distinction between mindfulness and meditation. And so I come to the community and, y'all know how I do. I come strong, confident, brilliant. And he let me talk and say, yeah, Brother Morton, but there is a difference between mindfulness and meditation. And let me help you draw the distinction between the two. And I love to learn. And so I have been using the differences and distinctions between mindfulness and meditation ever since he actually taught me. So I'm excited that he's here. I want to welcome our sisters that are with us, Kimberly Maldonado. Thank you for joining us today. And then, of course, wifey Marla Morton is here as well to be able to hear the training. The training will also live up inside the Forge, where our video vault of trainings for men that are in one of our programs, they'll be able to kind of access this in perpetuity and learn from it over and over again. And so it's going to be an exciting training for them, even those who are not here yet and have not had the ability to join us here live. For those of you that are watching by YouTube, welcome. This will not live on YouTube. It is on YouTube for a very short period of time while the live training is happening. And then that live training will implode, right, Leroy? It'll implode and it won't be there anymore. So enjoy the training. For those of you that are watching, enjoy the training while you can. And for you as a man, if you're watching on YouTube, know that there's a community of brothers that exists for you to sharpen and to become the version of yourself that Spirit originally intended. So if you want more information about uh, the Remand um, Brotherhood, you can go to school.com and I'll put it in the show notes or make sure Prince puts it in the show notes so that you can go to www.school.com/remand and it'll take you to our community. It is a free community. We don't charge you to come inside the community. We add a lot of value to your life, whether you're father, a business owner, um, husband, or you want your personal finances together, whole bunch of information and transformation that lives up inside that community. So I want to make sure that you guys can join us there. Also, I want to announce King's Council Weekend that is coming up in March. Um, and if you go to www.King's Council Weekend, you'll be able to see and register for King's Council Weekend. It's going to be an incredible time for you to hang out with again here in Atlanta. A group of brothers that the last time we did it was just Incredible. The level of transformation that took place with the men that were here was incredible. So let me give you, without what they say in Leroy's church, without further ado, let me introduce my brother. Dr. Kelly R. Little is a nationally respected leader in fatherhood development and family leadership. He is the founder and CEO of Father's Haven and Urban Institute for Strengthening Families, where his work focuses on equipping men to lead their families with clarity, responsibility, and with purpose. Dr. Little brings both research-backed insight and real-world experience to the conversation on fatherhood. And today he'll be guiding us through intentional fatherhood, leading with purpose and legacy. So I want you guys, if you know how to do it, with your react button, give me some claps for Dr. Kelly Little. Man, the floor is yours, bruh. Welcome to today's training. We can't hear you.
I'm getting ready to try to
There we go.
share
Okay.
for the slides. There we go. Where's my slides at? There we go. Give me 1 second. Show beginning. Can you see?
The slides aren't up yet. We can't see this. I can't see the slides.
Let me come back again. This is weird.
Yeah, I see me. I don't see the.
Here we go. Come back to this one. Try it now.
There we go.
There you go.
First, before we do anything, I appreciate you for extending this opportunity to be in space. I bid hello to everybody and welcome you as we walk on this 58-minute journey. Actually, hour and 30 minutes around fatherhood, but not fatherhood as an accident, but fatherhood beyond biology, fatherhood beyond where we sit at, but fatherhood from a space of intentional focus and support of fatherhood. And so, if you love fatherhood, send an emoji out there for me. And so, when we look at this, the first thing we want to talk about is goals. So, three kinds of fathers. It's the present father, it's the father with presence, and it's the absent father. And so every father comes to.
Hey Kelly, I don't want to interrupt you, man, but
Yep,
can you make your screen bigger? Can you put it on slideshow so we can see the actual slides?
yep. Hold on.
Okay. Okay.
And I'm gonna need you to interrupt me. Let me slide over here real quick. There we go. Yeah. It's weird because it's on slideshow. Let me come out. There we go.
There we go. Perfect.
All right, let's go out of this one. Now, when we look at the society that we live in, society tends to give us this version of who we supposed to be as men and fathers. And it's tied to masculinity, it's tied to hidden wounds, it's tied to excelling. But All of those struggles, all of our challenges, and who we are becoming is a part of who we will be. And today, we're going to go through this process of getting to intentionality with fatherhood, moving from generational trauma and adverse childhood experiences into breaking free and moving into what I consider to be generational blessings and bridges that not only prepare our children, but 7 generations forward. And when you think about all the work that the Remand Project does, is completely aligned to helping men to become the greatest versions of themselves and leave their mark on the world, not just with their children, but with their children's children's children, optimizing humanity and creating a space where we know that when we're no longer here or about to expire, that we've done our job and prepared our children to be able to navigate and add value to this place that we call the world and the universe. And so when we look at research and data, what it will share is that 24 million children live without their biological father, and that's roughly 1 in 3 households. I have a little bit of a challenge with that number only because even if I'm not in the house, it doesn't mean I don't have impact. And even if I'm in a home, it doesn't mean that I do have impact. Because present without presence is more harmful than not being involved at all. In addition to that, we know that the risks of obesity, childhood trauma, lack of confidence, obesity are all tied to lack of father being in a house with intentionality. And so when we want to make sure we build strong, resilient, and restored young people, we have to make sure that we are coming to the conversation with engagement, presence, and commitment to adding conversational pieces, learning lessons, understanding the data and the research, and how the intergenerational connection of man to son, which is a time-honored tradition, our council of elders, and being able to do something that women do extraordinarily well, which is connect with their mom, connect with their auntie and their grandparents. And so as men, these are the things that we have to intentionally make sure we inculcate into our interaction by bringing our young people into conversations so that they get to see dad in multiple environments so that we can create a legacy of strong, resilient, restored, and intentional young men, and for our daughters so that they know what to look for in terms of an intentional man. So what is the ripple effect of our presence? And I'm going to stop here for a minute because this is not just going to be me sitting here talking, but I'm going to ask that we have a little bit of an engagement, right? And so in that engagement, if you will, just like us to come off and I want us to talk about what they see fatherhood as in terms of intentional fatherhood. What does intentional fatherhood look like for you
Yeah,
today? I want to throw one more addition to it, Doc. Today, but also as a young person growing up.
yeah. I really identify with the whole idea of present versus presence, right? Because I am intentional about, even though my children are grown now, I've always been really, really intentional about making sure that I was present um, to handle conflict, to give wisdom. Even now, right? As a dad of adult children, I'm still doing that. I did not have that growing up. My father was in the house, but really wasn't didn't exhibit presence, right? He didn't know how to. So later on, he writes a letter to me explaining to my grandmother, "Hey, tell my son I loved him. I just didn't know how to be a father." So your idea around, the difference between being present and having presence is one that I think should be highlighted, because you saying, well, just because he is not in the house doesn't mean he can't be impactful. In fact, the data proves that, right? And just because he's in the house doesn't mean he is impactful. So I think that's a very, very true statement.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I'll say this too, and I've grown up like this. I know my mom and dad have been divorced since I was 4. And as Donald was saying, I mean, that was it didn't even though he wasn't in the household, it did not keep him from being present in my life because I would spend summers, weekends, all of those. I would spend those times with him. And as I got older into my teenage years, I I even well I laugh at it now, but my mom when I got 13, 14, my dad was an educator. So she felt as if I needed to be with him to get what she couldn't give me, which was
Hmm.
the understanding of what a man what a man is and understanding. Um and I only lasted a year. So that I think mom won't come back home because my father was an elder. So I was just like, I was like, I can't do this. But even beyond that, there was still, even though there was this time and space, because it was a time and space that I felt like those young adult years, he wasn't there. And that was when I felt like I needed him the most to do what Donald, like you were saying, to kind of guide you where your relationship, and this is what I've learned, your relationship with your parents kind of grows as you grow because they go from being your teachers, your father goes from being that teacher to then being a counselor, being a consultant, where they're there for you to be able to talk to, to kind of help you navigate through certain situations, especially us as men. And I didn't have this. I'm trying to figure this stuff out. What is this manhood thing all about? And not having that, I could have made, a lot of wrong decisions. But because I had certain upbringing, it allowed me not to be able to do certain things because I'd had the foundation built in me, both of them. So it did help as I gotten older, but still having that presence, as we're talking about here, it is vitally important because as a young man trying to figure out and navigate how do you handle certain things. Just something as simple as how do you talk to young girls, young women. Something as simple as shaving, I never got from my father. That simple task. I didn't learn from him. It was just me learning how to do it. So I get what you're saying and the importance of that, man. That presence versus present. It makes a big, big, big difference. It's made a big difference in my life, and I think it makes a difference. And we can see the results of it if we look at society today with the young men and that generation. Of what that looks like, what that means.
Doc, I mean, you hammered it because the other thing is I've been able to witness you in multiple spaces and very decisive. And so when we talk about scripture up here, like, so we talking about Joshua 24:15 and how, as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. But in the auspices of using scripture and being intentional with scripture and spirituality and making that connection to leading, you think of being able to make decisive decisions and show decisive leadership as a man is supposed to lead his home. But leading my home doesn't mean that I'm a totalitarian or a dictator. It means that we operate together, but my job and my role is to be strength, is to be all those things that I'm supposed to do, and do so in a confident, not cocky manner, being clear, being decisive, and adding direction, helping to cultivate and develop morals and values. And when the appropriate time comes, back to something both of you just said, being able to coach and sit back and allow them to come because we did what we were supposed to do. Now our job is to listen and communicate and help shape so that they develop that muscle memory to be able to continue to grow that. And so that goes into our personal responsibility. The other thing is, as men and fathers, and being intentional around it, our job is to affirm. So I'm going to go from Joshua to Abraham, affirm their greatness. And I could even go back to, well, I'm not going to go there. I'll wait for another time. But we're going to pass on our children's greatness through our voice into their spirits so that they walk in alignment with who they was destined to be in this universe. And then the other thing is having a household vision. Again, because faith without works is dead, but that faith also had to be accompanied with the vision, and then making the vision plain and putting the vision either in writing for many. For some, it may not be putting it in writing, but putting it somewhere that is organized so that we can use it to shape our trajectory and optimizing who we are becoming as a father, because we'll grow and even in our fatherhood, right? Because the goal is to move from fatherhood to elder, and ultimately we'll no longer be here. That's when we move into an ancestor, knowing that we did the things and collectively create the space so that our young people will know how to navigate that space, thus creating good character, morals, values, and a way of life that other people will desire to follow. So, um,
Hey, Kelly, you want to entertain questions now
yep,
or
I,
okay?
I
Here's,
do.
here's a question my wife has. Kelly, how would you share with a divorced father how to co-parent and be intentional with his child if he doesn't get along with the mom?
So it's funny. Great question. Um, One of the things I talk about is centering the conversation on your child and your children, because they're not in your life until they're 18, but in your life until either one of you are no longer here. And so I don't have to like you. I should, because we father the child. And so when we can help them move through their grief, because 90% of the time that's where they're operating from, grief and pain, and center on what's in the best interest for our child or our children. And so a lot of times in groups, what we do is we ask, how come the relationship is bad? What role did we play in it that we might not know we played in it? And then we also ask, what is the relationship with you with your father and the mother with her father, so that we can dig deep enough to find out if that's something that's playing a factor. And we kind of talk through that. It's weird you asked that, because just had a situation yesterday with some guys who were dealing with child support, and it was a trauma bonding in that moment. And once I said, well, let's look at this from the other perspective, people took on a different energy and realized that we were absolutely right. There were some things that they did, and they admitted some faults that they made, and that ultimately, when we don't have that relationship, we are creating disharmony for our son or daughter or both, and that will be passed down to the next generation. And so then the question becomes, is this what we ultimately want for our children? And 95% of the time, a man would admit that's not what they would want for their child or their children. And they're willing to look at themselves and do the inner work so that they can have resolution. And even if it's mom's challenge, we we engage mom in love, and ultimately we see things shift or change.
Does that answer your question, Lala? She said that was great. Okay.
Okay, thank you. And so we look at these four quadrants on here, and I know y'all used to quadrants in the remand group. So this quadrant speaks to one, and Lala's look. That question was great in that sometimes we are not being genuine or authentic, and being able to share what mistakes we made, and that's critically important with our kids as well. If we don't show that, well, we made some bad choices, bad decisions that impacted the relationship, now there's um, an issue that can create problems for our children, or it just humanizes who we are. And that struggle, if we navigate it appropriately, it helped us to become a better person. And Frederick Douglass said, there can be no progress without a struggle. So lean into your mistakes, because that's the very vessel that allow you to walk into your greatness. Quadrant number two, when we talk about creating realistic, repeatable processes or experiences with our kids, whether it's praying together, having conversations at dinner together, eating as a family, so that there's a connection. Because I don't know about anybody else in here, but all children from, I think, about 14, maybe 13 to 16 go to Mars, and they act different. And so we bring them back through these rituals, right? And these rhythms that allows us to be in relationship, and our back to presence versus being present. Our active involvement and engagement allows them to come back to us once they realize that their friends' perspective isn't as precise or isn't as um, informed as us as adults. And we've been there, we've been children, and so that's really important. But if we're not doing enough with them, their rhythm is going to be where people find space to them, for them. And that's why it's important for quadrant three to share our stories. What mistakes did we make? Going back to authenticity and being honest about when we made bad decisions and bad choices. And as fathers and being intentional fathers, we have to make sure we know the difference between punishment and discipline. And discipline being tied to disciple, and disciple being tied to education. And that allows us to not only welcome our child or children to be curious and ask questions, but doing it in a respectful way. And then creating space when their answers are not in alignment with what we think, because that gives us the opportunity to dig a little deeper so that we can really get into why they're thinking that way. And that helps them to move beyond those questions. I'm gonna go through this really quickly. Here, this is not talking nothing more about we us our it's not as children. I remember it was do as I say, not as I do. And in reality, if we're being intentional, what comes out our mouth, if we're authentic and genuine, will be the same way we move and maneuver and live our life. Otherwise, there's a disconnect for young people. Um, and that means that if I'm dealing with some trauma or adverse childhood experience that I haven't dealt with, it's going to pass down cellularly to our kids. So the opportunity for us to lean into our own personal growth, do the work by ourselves in healing our wounds, understanding each child that we parent is going to be different, and showing them what character is. And do me a favor, I need to pull this up to be able to see everybody. Can everybody tell me how many of you are perfect? Hey, Dr. Morton, I need you to let me know how many people. Put an emoji, how many people perfect. If you perfect, put a thumbs up. Uh-oh.
I'm the only one.
So you don't even want to put you perfect?
Yeah, I'm the only one. Everybody else.
So I'm gonna challenge everybody. If you got type in your search bar perfect, and then the opposite of perfect is what? Somebody please tell me.
Flawed, imperfect.
Okay, imperfect broken into two words is what?
I'm perfect.
So all of us is perfect in God's eyes in the moment that we're standing in, with opportunity to be different tomorrow. Right? I didn't say we were perfection, but we are perfect, especially when we're open for improvement. So I only throw this into consideration because our young people think that they come out the womb and they running. But we all had to crawl, we all had to fall. And when we understand those things, and that failure is the thing that we should be embracing in our intentionality, because the greatest lessons comes in our failure, not in our success. So from that, that allows us to be in a space where we can accept coaching, parenting differently, and are willing to be able to invest time in processes and sharing our wisdom and preparing not only our kids, and I didn't even say this, so I'm gonna stop before I get to the last one. For me, there are four types of father, archetypes: biological father, spiritual father, community father, and adoptive father. Many times, as fathers, an adoptive father is when we inherently take responsibility for the young people who are around our young people. Spiritually, we already talked about. We know what the biological father is, and so sometimes, as a man, although I lead my children, I need the pause. I need the princes. I need the both the docs to be in my life and in my children's life if they're in my community, because it takes a village. And if it takes a village, we have to be willing. Sometimes when our message is not coming through, part of having it together is leveraging the collective wisdom of our community to be able to either give us a different perspective or add sage advice to our young people, if that makes sense. And that allows us to leave a legacy of them understanding that we don't do this in this world by ourselves. It's our interpersonal connections tied back to emotional intelligence that allows us to pass on these lessons, the wisdom, and resources that we don't even know about, to change cultures, to change our legacies and expand them to go beyond our existence in this physical realm. Now, that means, and so this is Morton asks a wonderful question. And part of that question is, what happens if the relationship isn't going well and they're not co-parenting? That's where we need to seek counseling, mediators, and that's only if your community can't help us move beyond that. Because as I stated earlier, I might be dealing with some unresolved trauma. I might be angry because of the way the relationship, either one of us, moved along. I might be fighting with some other things and some other demons that I need support to disrupt patterns that's not serving me, my family, and the other parent who is physically, spiritually, mostly also um, extremely important in my child's life. And we got to work through those things so that we build healthy muscle memory that allows us to be able to parent from not from emotion, but from understanding and responsiveness as opposed to reaction. So I'm going to ask a question. And the question is, what are some of your daily practices as fathers and men that you've done with your kids or are doing with your kids to this day?
I try to send because I'm in another state, so I try to send each of my children a voice note every day, so that it just doesn't become a text, but
Mm-hmm.
I'll send a voice note. Um, Ironically, they're pretty responsive, so they engage with me as well. Um, Let them know how proud I am of them, and I'll always make sure that they know I love them and make myself available to them. So that's my daily practice to kind of send a voice note.
Powerful. Dr. Leroy.
Well, I'm not a father, but I have nieces and nephews. And what I've been doing now, with my nephew, because he's 25, I want to say 25. So he's at that age where I was, what I was telling you, where I didn't have my dad. And his
Mm-hmm.
father's in his life, and I don't know how much of that his father is in his life, but he's taken to trying to figure out this entrepreneurship thing. So I'm there, and we talk a couple times a week, maybe once or twice a week, and it's about me trying to give him the knowledge that I didn't get from my dad at that time. So I've introduced him just to things that he can learn, or that I think that it would be good for him to learn now, because he's able to really grasp it, understand it, and we have conversations about it too. So it's good in that way, because he's able to say, Uncle Leroy, because he'll send me a message, Uncle Leroy, I got this and that. What do you think about this? So it shows that me pouring into him in that way, and taking the time to show him, that I don't necessarily have to be his dad. I've never tried to replace his dad, because his father's is a good dude. He's a good dude. And even though my sister, which is his mother, they aren't together anymore, he had always been a pretty good dude, and in his children's life. So I've never stepped on that, but I've always wanted to make sure, hey, if there's ever, especially now that he's old, if there's ever a time that he needs me or there are things that I can pour into him, that I'm there for him, and he knows that I'm there and that he can anytime, like Donald was saying with his kids, he can pick up the phone, Uncle Leroy, I got this going on, and there've been some things that I've had to, I had to, kind of jump on him about when he was, and some years ago. It's like, come on, that's not what we do in this family. That's not how we act in this family, and letting them know we have a standard in our family, and letting them know, yeah, you have a responsibility to live up to it, just like I did, just like the others in the family do too. So that's kind of like my part, that I try to be there for them, for my nieces as well too, but not in a little different way, but also they know too that they can talk to me, and that I'm there for them as well too.
So that's powerful in that these practices become rituals. And then Dr. Leroy, I'm gonna say this now. I, I know because I heard you say it before how much you were involved with other family members. And so that's where I went back to those four tiers:
Mm,
biological, spiritual, community, and adoptive. And so you fit in multiple categories because as fathers, um, from a like adoptive standpoint, for instance, I'm not literally adopting, but because by proximity to my sister, I will step into that role to help aid when, let's say, for instance, they hear this on this weekend, but during this weekend while they with my sister, and I have those opportunities because we had that relationship. We create a rhythm where they trust Uncle Leroy much like, and I hear people say, um, either my father was involved, but my uncle was just like a father to me as well. So I had two or three fathers. And as you was explaining that, I'm thinking of some people that I've engaged and interacted with, and those things, especially when you talk about sometimes you had to get on that nephew or that niece, because I had to do the same thing with my sister's son, right? So those things are critical because we're teaching them what to do. Because my image for a period of time had to be James from Good Times, right? And so, because except when I went to the South from Philadelphia to see my grandparents, that's when I seen it in action and seen how my grandfather did with my other aunts. And that gave me a template for creating intentionality in how I would show up for my kids when I became a father. Thus, with the hope that that'll be passed down and creating a legacy of values, family, story, wisdom, collective information being shared, but also a template with who my grandfather was, who my great grandfather was, who I am, and who they are, so that we can push that legacy forward. And all this is tied to um, the family legacy model that Brooke Moser talks about in this space. But I wanted to make sure that we practically talk about it and not talk about it just from the way it comes out in his book, right? And so young people and children remember, and I'll keep harping on the importance of shared meals, rituals that we establish, making sure they remember those family outings and trips and experiences. And it's not always about money, but about how did I make them feel? Did I make it engaging? Adding creativity in there and having them shape and be a part of what that ritual might be. Because when I got older, I thought it was certain things. I had two daughters. I'm going around the country talking about fatherhood. I asked my daughter, was I a good father? And she said yes. But she said, you be on the phone when you be taking me to dance, which meant I had to start cutting my phone off. And lo and behold, like, I don't know, it's probably about 2 or 3 weeks later, we in the car, no phones on. She get on the phone and call her girlfriend, but you told me I shouldn't be on there. However, I don't think she thought I would shift that quick and make it a practice because that was a need or a desire that she wanted in that moment. So me being intentional, I realized what was important to her and I centered that in that moment. So right here, man, I really want to talk about, in many spaces, you often hear deadbeat dads. And I'm going to go back to Mrs. Morton's question earlier, and I hear this with courts and professionals calling fathers deadbeat, when in actuality, a lot of times they might be dead broke. And I don't mean just financially broke. Sometimes they dead broke because they've been trying so hard to engage and be involved in systems and institutions, create barriers that cause problems. Family court is not, depending on where you at, hasn't been the most supportive. So for me, it's been almost 13 years I've been doing work and working with child support to change practices, to change how their debt compromise policies are, to be more father friendly and father serving, to create spaces where men and fathers feel comfortable. But this goes beyond just like narratives. It goes to aesthetics and office. And so I'm gonna tap on the ladies real quick. Um, in doctors' offices and other venues where it should be a space for both parents, what do you see when if you had a child, what do you see in terms of magazines and stuff in the office? And you can put it in the chat if you don't want to come off mute.
Yes, I was about to say, ladies and gentlemen as well, if you need to come um, off mute, you can, just so that it saves time and you don't have to type it up. Um, restate the question. Oh, Marla said only mothers with their children.
See,
Yeah.
Mrs. One, I believe you was in some of my articles that I had a problem with child support or some stuff. So 2009, I was moved out of mental health. Well, I was directing there because they shift up the whole mental health process in North Carolina. When I came back from a deployment, no longer was in Charlotte, and they moved everything to Raleigh. At that point, they put me in child support. As soon as I went in the office, I seen all pictures of women with their kids, all magazines that were magazines with women. And I said, that's not a problem. Where the problem is, you have no magazines for men, and have no pictures with men with their kids. So the image that we're showing, because as a organization, child support doesn't represent mom or dad, they represent the best interests of children. And so I say that to say we have to make sure that we're challenging systems but challenging perspectives. When somebody talk about, let's say they mention absent fathers, well, the truth is, um, Black and brown fathers are the most active and engaged fathers with their children. And so I'm always centering that, and then centering how many men and fathers I've helped navigate the family court process to create better outcomes, so that now I got child support building relationships with men because they know they want to be a part of that process. So disrupting systems is a part of intentional fatherhood, right? How do I support men who are broken in that moment, so they move from dead broke to not surviving but thriving, and moving beyond deadbeat and trauma bonding to getting to a space to elevating themselves so that they can elevate their families? Because at the end of the day, when a man or a father isn't suffering in silence and is intentional in how he navigates his economic shifts, because he'll find a program like the Remand Project, they'll find other resources that help them navigate legal obstacles that I just talked about. They'll be willing to be vulnerable and safe in spaces that will help them move beyond that trauma, address those issues, and move into affirmations in their greatness, because they're surrounded by other men who speak in life, support, and encouragement into them. And so intentional fatherhood is not just individual but collective, thus helping us to eradicate those gaps that I just spoke about and moving into having clarity on what my purpose is, and then aligning with that clarity so that I can now no longer focus on the problem, but be a part of the solution.
Hey, Kelly, I want to read something that Paul writes because I think it speaks to the barrier piece.
Yes,
Uh,
sir.
but it speaks to the barrier piece in a way that I don't necessarily think we always think about. So he was saying to you, he said, "You've given me an idea." He said, "My daughter and I don't talk as much as we used to, and she's decided to practice Islam like her mother and her aunt, which is her mother's sister. My grandfather was also Muslim, so I understand. But with all that said, I'd like to see if she'd be willing for us to pray together at night. I'm just open and curious as to how that would look." So do you have you want to respond to that at all, man? I think because when we talk about barriers, we often talk about systemic barriers, things of that nature. But
Mm-hmm.
Paul could have allowed the whole religious barrier to be one, right? But he's decided, hey, I want to broker this relationship around prayer and connection, even though he's not Muslim, right? So you want to talk to that at all?
Yeah, sure. So it's funny, and you said it at the most opportune time, because when I talk about daily habits for intentional fatherhood, prioritizing, what Paul did was he took what could have been a challenge and moved it into an opportunity by creating or prioritizing quality time. So in that space, she's seen him being flexible enough to be able to create prayer time. Now, if she has any doubts, because she's seen her father willing to make an adjustment, young people have very high emotional intelligence. And as a result of that, when things get tough, and I don't know the relationship with mom and the auntie, but she's going to remember that experience of her dad shifting, knowing he's not a Muslim, to center and ground her as a priority. And so create that space where they have something that they're doing together, even though that's not what he believes in. And so, what I would share with Paul is that to be consistent, but not only that, but creating some additional moments of quality time when your daughter's not with you, because she'll continue to run to you now just because you've made yourself not only available but giving her access to be able to speak to you even when it may not be comfortable. Because I'm sure when she converted, um, and she knew that you was a Christian. Are you a Christian, Paul?
I would consider myself a Christian for sure.
Okay. And so in those beliefs, you didn't let religion get in the path of your relationship.
No, sir. And
And
we
so
haven't,
at go
go
ahead.
ahead, I'm sorry.
No, you talk, brother.
And we haven't started this, but when you put up that other slide that spoke to these different practices, um, it opened up an opportunity for me because, my daughter been through a lot. She's 30 years old. She's had different infections in her body. I had my daughter when I was 17, and she went through a lot of stuff in our gaps in our relationship. And she got infections in both of her fallopian tubes. So she's concerned about not being able to have children. Um, Her mother's side of the family is well known in Wilmington and Newcastle County and in a lot of the rough spots of our communities. And she knows a lot of people, just like her dad and her mom. And she's connected to a lot of people in the city. And a lot of people around her have died. And I mean, I was just talking to her the other day, and she said, I said, I didn't want to talk to anybody, Daddy. The guy you met, you and my mom seen that time coming out of the house was killed New Year's Eve from an 18-year-old robbing him, and like just after leaving from seeing his children, a guy she was dealing with. And that's been a lot. Another gentleman she was dealing with, his son got killed in that Lincoln University shooting just this past year when at the Lincoln University homecoming. But like for years, my daughter has been, because she's so popular, has had intimate relationships with people that have gotten murdered, and she just, no matter what I try to do now, she be at a loss of words. But I'm just wondering, prayer will be an awesome place for us to start. And I'm fascinated and curious to know, with her being Muslim, how that will go.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm open to it, and I think that's a place we can attempt to start. And I would love to hear how she would. I'm willing to lead the prayer, but I'm willing to. I want her to be able to pour out. She used to her father praying. I want to hear what her heart, her spirit has to say. So that slide you put up just provoked an idea. And I'm excited about it.
Let me tell you something, Brother Paul. Now, my kids will tell you, man, I was special forces for 10 years. I boxed all my life, martial arts. But I'm the dude that watched the Hallmark channel all year round, except when football or basketball going on. I'm going right back to the Hallmark channel.
That's interesting.
Wow, you watch it too?
No, but I've gotten softer. I'll be 49 in the summer. I've gotten softer because I lived a hard life.
Right.
That and I've been in different accidents. People have struck me from behind just sitting at lights. I've been in a lot of situations. I got hit by a car as a child, broke my femur bone. I've had a lot of things. I've had guns put to my head because I was a knucklehead back in the day, and jokers went that route with me at different times. And I've gotten softer in my older age, brother. So you telling me you watching the Hallmark channel? I don't know if it's the same reason, but what you shared, special forces, that like when you really live that stuff, you understand hurt, pain, death, and all that. Like I get frightened by things, brother. And I'm willing to admit that in a circle like this. But when you said Hallmark channel, and I don't mean to divert the conversation, but I felt like it struck me like, I wonder if it's the same reason I've gotten softer in my older, as I've gotten older.
And I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna add this to that, because you've gotten softer, but you've gotten wiser too, right? And so those are the levels of fatherhood.
Amen.
Right? Because straight up I'm from North Philadelphia, so bad choices, bad soldier, but continued to evolve after college, played ball, did those things, right? But kept learning. I was parenting and fathering from a deficit because I didn't have the template, because I've never seen my father. But my mother never said anything negative about him, which is how I ended up in the path of doing fatherhood and fatherhood work. To date, man, I know on paper I've served over 40,000 men over
Wow.
the course of about 30 years,
Wow.
all over the country. And so like, and the stories don't change, the names change,
Got it.
right?
Amen. Mm-hmm.
And so like I said, I shared the hallmark because I resonated with everything you were saying. And as you were speaking, it literally was piercing my soul. One, you being vulnerable enough to share your piece, but then the other piece, you being able to step back and be intentional of, in that moment, catching something, which speaks to your emotional intelligence, because that's part of that is awareness and seeing how you have an opportunity to bridge that
Amen.
gap.
Yes,
And
sir.
I can tell the co-parenting relationship is there, the way you just referenced something else as well. So those things are critically important. And then let me go ahead real quick, since I got all y'all on here. How do we
We have
spell
we have to stop exactly on time, Kelly.
yep,
So you got about 15 minutes or so.
yep. Oh yeah, no, I'm on it. I
Okay.
only got about 4 or 5 more slides and
Okay.
then leave room for questions.
Okay.
But somebody tell me, how do you spell love for young people?
Time.
You
Mm.
funny. Spot on though.
Yeah, they just want time.
That's it. It's crazy because when you get with social services and other places, what they're going to talk about, you got to have this kind of room, you got to do this, you got to do that. And in actuality, all they want is time. They don't care about anything else.
Yeah.
They don't care about the gift. I mean, they might care about the gifts, but the most important thing is the time back to presence, not just being present, but spending quality time actively engaged and showing up for special events for them, which is time,
Yeah.
celebrating their victories, and being consistent, right? And all the research and data supports it. I'm skipping over that. So when we talk about, I want to definitely hit this one. When we talk about being kind of intentional, right? We also got to talk about what is our vision for fatherhood. What's our why? What are our core values? But also, we got to be figuring out when our kids are older, what are their core values that they've developed aside from you? What's our shared commitment between us and the other co-parent? And then we should be writing statements. And so this is going to be on the site. And so you can go through some of these. And I'm going to send you some other stuff. Like I had what's called a fatherhood legacy map, right? What legacy are we going to leave with our children? How do we want them to remember us when we're no longer here? And that can only happen if we're there while we're here, right? So that requires a certain level of intention. Um, who can support you in this journey? Of course, I'm gonna say the Remand Project. You got other fatherhood organizations. There are other supporting structures that exist out there, and oftentimes, like when I had a fatherhood group, it was just for fathers. Two women ended up going through the group because they was involved with child support, and by mistake they got in. They wanted to pull them out, and I said no, keep them in. And I wanted to keep them in because women give a different perspective, so that they can glean from that perspective. Because if we keep having certain issues, then as a man and a father, I can say certain things, but if I want to be intentional, I need to pull feedback and observation and ideals from somebody outside of the brotherhood at times, so I gain greater understanding and perspective to help me show up very differently than I'm showing up. So I say all that to say, in order to build your support network, you got to find your people. Where's your tribe at? If you ain't here right now, you found your tribe. Is the Remand Project. You got Dr. Leroy. You got Brother Prince. Of course, you got the fearless leader, Dr. Donald. Now we have to allow ourselves to be accountable, right? But before we can be accountable, we have to be vulnerable to look at ourselves with intentionality and find out not where the challenges or barriers at, because challenging barriers are nothing but opportunities based on the eyes who look at them with intentionality. And then the most important thing is reciprocity. We got to pay it forward, but sometimes we got to lift as we climb. So we're building and pulling other brothers. And when you have a group of men who are intentionally fathering, the circle itself will auto correct in balance so that the scales align. But we have to be willing to do our internal work and be intentional about the process. So what I'll say is, oh no, not on any of our watch will we not allow all of us to be accountable and move into intentionality as it relates to fatherhood collectively, operating in consistent love with our kids, but in harmony with the co-parents. Continue to have that intergenerational conversation around building legacy and remembering not to wait. Choose it today. Write down some specific commitments that you're willing to make today. Share commitments with another father who you're willing to be accountable with. What are you willing to change? Connect with one of the resources. Reach out to Dr. Leroy. Reach out to Dr. Donald about what other support and services. They got a whole conglomerate of opportunities that's coming. And then have one intentional conversation with your child or children this week. Ask them something that they want to do. Ask them how they want to engage with you. Ask them what's something that they really love about you and what's something they wish you would shift. And with that, I'm finished the presentation and open the floor. What I got for any questions?
Amen. So let me just appreciate you. Every time I have the privilege of working with you and hear you present, uh, I think I think both Leroy and Paul said it at different times, just and my wife as well, just a tremendous amount of great information. My wife actually said, um, my wife said, I only wish these programs were around when we were kids. This knowledge is gold. So many families can be saved and healed if they take advantage of this information. Um, so I think what impresses me most is um like you have really taken this idea of fatherhood. I've never heard you present on fatherhood, right? I've always only heard you present on emotional intelligence and mindfulness and meditation. And so I learned a lot today. Um, so I just wanted to appreciate you, right? And I think the next one I want you to do for next quarter is taking a deep dive, Kelly, in how a man restores his relationship with his child after being absent, right? Because there are a lot of guys that I talk to that after a while they say, man, my child better off without me. Like I ain't been there all this time. So and the work that we do at Remain, like I don't do fatherhood work. I do character work. And the character work was all up and through your slides, right? How does he continue to show up consistently when the barriers are there? Like we can't act like the barriers don't exist. The barriers are there, whether those barriers are systemic, whether those barriers are relational with mom, the barriers are there, whether the barriers are relationship that I don't have with my child. I want one, but my child, like, man, where you been all this time? Like, miss me. Like, don't try to come in and be that. I remember Paul talking with a guy inside Plumber Center, right? And Brother Kelly said, which spoke to so much that you talked about. The brother said, man, I'm going home and I'm gonna get out of here. And I found out that, my child being raised by another man and she's moved on. I'm going home. I'm gonna set everybody right. And I said, well, I think you should, but before you do that, where you been? He said, where you mean where I've been? I said, where you been? Why haven't you been there? Like the other guy's there. Where have you been? He said, Dr. Morton, I've been in jail. I said, well, shut the hell up. Like how are you gonna go home after being absent all this time? If I'm you, I go home, I shake that man's hand. And I say, you know what? Thank you for holding it down for me, man. So that my child would have an example while I was away. I'm back now. I want to work with you because when I came home from the army, my son was calling someone else dad. I was livid, right? And I didn't have any emotion. Kelly, I ain't had no emotional intelligence. I ain't had none of that. I'm like, so when he says, my dad, my dad said to me, you who? My dad. Nigga, I'm that ain't your dad, like, right? And so his mom said, oh no, you can't do that. You can't do that, right? And now he still calls that man his dad, he still calls me his dad. Me and his dad get along, we shake hands, right? So so I think there has to be some real reality talks about what it's going to take for a man to insert himself, right, Paul, into his child's life when he's been absent for a period of time. And I'm going to do the character work. How do you continue to push through? And Kelly, I'm going to ask you to do the skill set work, right? Around this is what character looks like in motion. Um, so that you don't give up, right? When it gets hard, because your child is used to you not being there, your child is used to you, in their minds at least, you done gave up multiple times. I don't have any expectations of you that you're gonna continue this process. So I think next quarter when you present again, bruh, that's what I would really ask you to really share. And I'm gonna make it my business to make sure that there are at least 50 men, Paul. 50 men, Leroy Prince, Lala, Miss Maldonado, thank you for hanging out on this call so that they can reintroduce themselves to the family. Because quite frankly, I'll say it in the presence of our sisters. A great job. My mom did a great job in giving me information. She created she helped me become a magnificent human being, but that manhood thing was lacking. And um, I want to make sure that brothers are without excuse, because the truth of the matter is, my spiritual father says it this way, Kelly: the strength of every nation is determined by the male population. And while I celebrate everything that's happening with our sisters, they in the C-suite, they holding it down. They've been holding families down for decades and centuries. If we are going to see a seismic shift in our culture, it can only be done when men do what we need to do. And that's the reason why there's such a fight against it.
Let me say this real quick because you hammered something. So a large part of my work is working with men. It's probably about 35% working with men navigating the child support system.
Yes, sir.
So they run up against those systems, the institutions, being in prison, reentry, and so like I had this conversation all the time, and really that's where I go back to. Okay, just like you asked the question, let's dig, let's be genuine and honest,
Yeah,
and what you see is people, is I can't even lie to you. Um, like it's I made some bad choices, bad decisions. I was dogging her out. So that's with a bad relationship. So we're gonna start from there
yeah,
and being accountable. And like when I'm like, I'm about to give up. Okay, well, you about to hurt your child. What was your relationship with your dad? And then you start digging. There was no relationship on this line.
for
So
sure.
now, like, then it's the group piece and it's a coaching piece. Now I'm able to pull you out to really be honest about what it is you're fearing in this moment. Beautiful um 30 for 30. I know Dr. Leroy up there in Beatmore area with Ray Lewis, right? Yo, like, so his dad was here in Charlotte because, I left Philly, I'm in Charlotte, and worked with me at the county. And they restored that because Ray was hurt like 8 times. He was pissed. Man, they the best of friends. Been the best of friends for, I think, about 15 years now, because they said it's going to stop with me, and the consistency stayed there on raising to mend that fence, so that, like, his, not just his sons, but outside of, back to, moving beyond just our immediate 2 generation. How do we create multi-generational impact? And I want to share this just real quick, 2 minutes. Never met my father, never seen him, no connection. Mom never said anything negative about him. Um, Fast forward, ancestry exists, all those things. My family all up in PA and what's the name, but then it goes back to South Carolina. Long story short, right? I met my second cousins who are up in Virginia, Petersburg, only to find out that this documentary that I watched for like 3 years, called A Prince Among Slaves, on this prince stolen from Guinea, Africa, took into Natchez, Mississippi, needing to be sent back 40 years later, was my sixth great grandfather on my paternal side. I went there last year for the first time, seeing people who look exactly like me. I have no malice, no anger, no frustration at whoever my dad is. Would love, I don't even know where he at or if he's alive.
Yes, sir.
But the connection to, like, finding out not only that the sixth great grandfather was a prince, the fifth great grand, I mean, the seventh was a king, and the eighth was what's the name over there? I can see where they're literally at. It will transform every cell in your body. It will shift the neuroplasticity is real. It changes your brain structure and how
Absolutely.
you show. Like, I've already been at peace, but it took me to a whole level, another spiritual level,
Yeah,
to be able to experience that. And I'm going back there next week just because of how impactful, and it shifted me to walk into fatherhood even in a more direct way, because I went through a doula process 2 years ago to be able to teach men how to support women through trimester 1, 2, 3,
wow,
and 4. So it
wow,
builds relationships
wow,
all throughout that period, and will
wow.
impact the young people on a cellular level.
Yeah, wow. I'm interested in that too, Kelly, because I think that's good. I do want to pause here and give Miss Maldonado an opportunity to come off mute and ask any questions, or put it in the chat if there's any questions that you have. Um, this has been absolutely phenomenal, Kelly. Miss Maldonado, do you have any questions that you want answered by Dr. Little, or uh, are we good? Okay. All right. Um, so I wanna make these announcements again as we close. King's Council weekends coming up in March is here in Atlanta. So if you are a brother and you're watching this inside the Forge, or if you are a brother and you're watching it live, you're watching it on YouTube, wherever you're watching it, go to www.kingscouncilweekend.com, and you'll be able to be with a collection of brothers that we are going through personal transformation. Because one of the things that Dr. Little talked about today that you cannot dismiss is that there is a personal development side to fatherhood that you have to have first. Otherwise, you're going to give up in the toughest of times. This is the work that we at Remain specialize in. Let me tell you very clearly, there's nobody that does it better than Remain. Remain is, I don't do fatherhood. I'm not a marriage coach. God knows I'm not a marriage coach. um, I am an expert in helping you to develop enough capacity to be a good father, to be a good husband. But then I leave it up to the specialists like Dr. Little and others that do this work. They eat, sleep, and drink this work that they do in their specialized area. I specialize in character. So when we come together, we get an opportunity to produce phenomenal fathers and um, husbands and men and business owners. And it allowed the work that Dr. Little does allows me to stay in my lane and do what I do without having to do what somebody else does. So I'm really, really excited about continuing to work with you, my guy. Um, you are one of the most brilliant minds I've ever met. Your ability to integrate not just the information, but culture, right? Which I think is a significant part of the work that has to be done. Um, so good job. LJ, you have any questions, man, before we roll?
No, no, no question, Dr. Kelly. This was so on point. This was so vital, and there's so many other brothers. And I tell Donald this all the time, man. And what I think Marla said it too. That if these are the kinds of things that weren't around for us that are part of that Gen X, and it's just like if these types of things were available, man, you just think about the possibilities. But having it now, you're able to just make yourself as a man grow even more. So I thank you for the work that you do. One, but just with this session here, this is so vital to what brothers and the next generation they need it so bad. I know you know
Yeah,
they need this type of not just information because we get information anywhere, but this type of taking the time to be able to learn this skill set, because this is a skill set. Fatherhood is a skill set to me,
yeah, for
something that
sure.
you have to take the time to learn. And if you don't have someone like you, Dr. Kelly, someone like Donald that cares and says, look, we know we have the tools that you need in order to be able to do it. Our society would be so much better. Our communities would be so much better. So thank you, brother. This was excellent, man. This was really excellent.
Thanks, Doc.
Appreciate you, bro. Paul, want to give you space, man. Anything you want to share in closing?
Dr. Donald, man, you keep doing it, brother. I appreciate you, sir. You putting
Appreciate you.
these creating these platforms. Um, it's absolutely necessary. The brother, I'm a repeat with I, you keep calling doctor, so I'm gonna assume Dr. Leroy was saying about the brother. Um, um, man, just the sound of each other's voices, the rhythm,
Mm-hmm.
the power in hearing from another black male,
Yeah,
and this the the it's just resounding, man, and it's healing. It's absolutely healing.
for sure.
Um, it's like a light in a dark tunnel, and I just whatever I can do to support this, I certainly need it. Anytime you need a real world thing, I know Dr. Donald gave you an assignment for next quarter. I'm working on my relationship with my son as well. He's my daughter 30, he's 27. And I'm trying to build that. He's living off of a bunch of assumptions about who his dad is, no matter how much I thought I spent time with him to build and bond. You know, I would love to talk with you. Anytime you need a real life example to go off of and teach from, I'm willing to give up my story, man, and my testimony. I know you work with fathers. I don't know how much you can talk about their stuff and incorporate it in your lessons. But if you ever need a real life joint, I'll give mine up because I'm looking for answers, brother. I need what we got going on right here.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can't overstress this enough. So
yeah,
thank
for sure.
thank you, everybody.
Yeah, you
Hey,
got it, man.
Doc.
He put his number in the chat. Um, so Paul, if we are off by the time you get a chance to copy that, then I'll send you a message with his number. I'll text you his number so that you have it. And this is what it's about. Kelly is the fatherhood specialist for Remand. And so you did exactly what I would hope a man would do, and that is say, hey, this is the position I'm in, and I need to talk to somebody who specializes in this, right? And so Kelly, as Kelly does, offered willingly his phone number and connection. So I'll make sure that you guys get connected so that you can get the answers. Um, and that's the way that it should work, right? We should honor one another's position in this community. Uh, you know, I don't pretend to be. I do okay at fatherhood, but that's the expert. That's the expert, right? So I stay in my lane. He handles his lane, and as a result, Paul becomes better, Leroy becomes better, Prince becomes better, and I become better as I talk with these different brothers. So I love and respect y'all. Prince, I don't want to ignore you, bruh. Prince is remains VA, but he's also a brilliant guy. He's not a dad. I don't think he's a dad. Leroy is Prince a dad?
I don't no, I don't believe so. I don't believe
Okay.
so.
Prince, is there anything that you would like to say?
Not at all. I'm
Okay.
just enjoying the conversation. It's been a great one.
Okay. Outstanding, man. Let me leave y'all with this last comment. Uh, Leroy said that he doesn't have any children. I would add that we know of. I think Leroy got kids.
There you go.
I think he has children. And the whole idea of reintegrating and injecting yourself in your kid when you've been absent. LJ still not claiming his kids, la la. So Kelly, he'll go back and he'll look at this again, and he'll secretly say, "This is what I need to do with my children that I've not I've not spoken with in a while." I love and respect y'all, and I will talk with you guys soon. Kelly, again, man, thank you so much. I love and respect you, bro. Talk soon,
Forbay
man.